This time, Lindsay, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Dawson, Dixon,
Here.
Griswold,
Here.
Hovey,
Here.
Parsons,
Here.
Smith, Taylor,
Here.
Witten,
Here.
Anders.
Mr. Buston, if somebody joins us late, will we record them for as attended?
Yes, yeah, as soon as they join us, we will add them, and Lindsay will add them too.
Okay, all right. This afternoon, we're here to discuss and talk about the declaration of a state of local emergency and measures to limit the further transmission of COVID in our community. Mr. Buston.
So just to give you how the draft resolution that's in front of you was put together, we have been doing an education process for about a month. We wanted to start that before the students returned, let all the businesses know what's expected of them as far as following the governor's orders. And we continued that through the students coming back and up until last week, at which time we pivoted to a more punitive enforcement. We saw that there were a number of students being impacted with the COVID infection. We attempted to focus on the bars and restaurants that were out of compliance. We've given multiple citations to them, those that were out of compliance. And we still seem to have some issues, and not the majority, but a few, still kind of thumbing their nose at the governor's orders. So in the meantime, we have seen what the city of Tuscaloosa did. The University of Alabama asked the city of Tuscaloosa to take some measures to help reduce the number of COVID infections among the student population. The city of Tuscaloosa opted to do a broad brush approach and just close down alcohol services basically in all bars and in all restaurants that have bars. We felt that that was a little bit of a broad brush approach that penalized those restaurants and bars that were following the governor's orders, penalized them unfairly. And so we took a more targeted approach with this resolution in front of you. We are giving our law enforcement a little more authority besides just issuing a citation. They can temporarily close the facility if you pass this resolution, temporarily close the facility until that facility comes into compliance with the governor's orders. One of the things that has kind of encouraged us with this approach instead of that while there are a number of students that were infected from visiting local bars or restaurants, we know that as many, if not more, of those students, when traced, were found to be infected from either sorority or fraternity gatherings or large private gatherings off campus and outside of the downtown or the focus area of around Auburn University. So we feel that we can also use this particular ordinance or the resolution in front of you to more effectively patrol those large parties as well and be able to shut them down if they're in violation. Auburn University has taken measures to control the sorority fraternity gatherings and anything that they can do on campus, and they have enacted more severe measures. And I think generally that's where we were coming from this resolution. I do have on the meeting with us today our city attorney and his associates. I also have our public safety director and assistant director, as well as our chief of police.
Okay. We'll start off. Is there any opening questions from the council? Anything you'd like to ask either the city manager or he could direct to any of our guests that are attending today, either our legal counsel or from our public safety? Anyone?
I do have a question. I don't know if it goes to Jim or if it goes to Rick or someone else.
Sure.
But early on in this process, or early on, we talked about a mask mandate or a mask ordinance, and I was told that it was going to be too hard to enforce. And so the council never really gave any action. We waited on the governor to make a mandate. And so can you kind of explain to me how now we are able to enforce this stronger than we believe we couldn't maybe a month or two ago?
I'll let our attorneys talk to that, but let me see if I understand the question, Stephen. We can enforce a mask ordinance or a mask rule that the governor put out. You, I believe, are asking why we couldn't do our own mask rule. Is that what you're asking?
No. The question is, we were told many times that it would be hard to enforce any kind of mandate with a mask, and we basically waited until the governor put forth a mask ordinance or a mask mandate. How is this? We are now trying to enforce really strict rules on some of the local businesses here. And so I'm just trying to get an understanding of why is it now a priority to enforce. Does that make sense?
I'm still a little confused, but I'm not sure that, and it could be just confusion of understanding on my part, but we have always been able to enforce the governor's orders. We're asked, when the governor originally put out her orders, we were asked to be lenient, and we did that. As I said when I started off, we spent about a month trying to educate,
Right.
hoping that would bring about a change. It didn't. And so we started to become more punitive, started to give out more citations. We found while we're doing that some of the businesses got multiple citations and seemed to not still come into compliance. So in this last week, our police have been out there. We had focused on businesses. We are now focusing on businesses and patrons. So if you're not standing outside of a bar in a line and you don't have a mask on and you're next to another person, then you will get a citation. What we are doing through this resolution is giving some additional teeth to our law enforcement, to where if the business is in violation of the governor's order, they not only can give them a citation, they can close them down until they come into compliance with the governor's order. And Rick or Stephen, if you want to weigh in on anything to help clarify, maybe if I may not be understanding Stephen's question, so.
Certainly, Mr. Buston, I don't exactly understand it either with regard to the mask versus what we're discussing now. And I would leave the enforcement issues to the public safety director and our chief of police as to any specifics about enforcing a mask ordinance particularly. But or the governor's prohibitions or guidance on wearing masks. But
I think y'all know exactly what question I've been asking. So, but continue, please.
pardon me, I didn't. I'm not familiar again with any particular question that, again, I didn't understand the question, but I was not have given any opinion specifically about a mask enforcement. And the responses that we've been asked to give as legal counsel have to deal with the enforcement of a particular ordinance or ordinances or language within an ordinance that originated with the city manager's office, and I presume through discussions with members of the council, which we've done since Monday about 2:00. So what you see before you is the result of those discussions and efforts, and it does allow for.
Let me make it really clear. I will try to be as clear as I possibly can, and it may not be a question. It may just be more of a statement with trying to get some understanding. We had 2 meetings to discuss a mask mandate. And then we made no action. We waited until the governor made a decision on a mask mandate. Correct? Do you follow this question? Follow this information?
Right, Stephen, so I think that was what I asked you, if that was what you were asking. And let me
So
just,
the question is, when we were having those discussions, many people said, and I'm speaking, I don't want to call anyone specific on the council, but everyone said it was going to be so difficult to enforce. I believe you, Mr. Buston, have said that it was going to be nearly impossible to enforce a mask ordinance. So what I'm trying to get at is we're now following what the governor is saying, right? Which is there is now a mask mandate that we have to follow, and I believe it has been extended to sometime in October. The reason we are here is to enforce a stricter policy on bars that are not following the mandate that is given by the governor. How are we now able to enforce a stricter policy on these local businesses? That's what I'm trying to get to.
okay, and now I think I understand now what you're saying.
I think I can help with that.
Go ahead, Paul.
So the mask, just to kind of separate the two, the mask issue that is difficult for enforcement is when the governor's order doesn't say you have to wear a mask every. You have to wear a mask.
I'm losing you, Paul.
You're
Mr. Register, you broke up on me. Sorry, I was missing what you were saying.
How about now?
I think that's better.
Thank you. So the mask order itself, it doesn't make it where it's mandatory that you have a mask all the time in any certain particular places, particularly outside. What's more important, and I think speaks to where this resolution is to the distancing and having people be in proximity to each other. That is much easier to look at and see, all right, we have people that are in close proximity to each other. The mask is a little more difficult. So I think that's where maybe we as public safety had said originally that it would be difficult because the mask would come into play only in some situations where it would be within 6 feet of each other. The bars and these other places, the issue is the density of the people that are congregating. And I think that's what this language speaks to address, if that helps.
It does. Thank you very much. I appreciate your response.
Tim, while Paul's with us, Paul, could you just speak to the confidence that public safety has? And I know Cedric's with us as well, the confidence that you guys have to be able to enforce this resolution.
I'll let Chief Anderson weigh in on the enforcement part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Chief,
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay. I mean, as far as enforcement goes, this is something that we've already been enforcing. We have gone to the bars the past 2 weeks, initially warning and letting them know what was coming. And so as far as us going in and using this order to ensure that social distancing is taking place, it has not been anything difficult for us to do. We're not necessarily looking for masks inside of the establishments. What we plan on doing is addressing some of the activity outside of the nightclubs, and that's simply having four or five people standing shoulder to shoulder for half a block. Again, it's back to the social distancing. It doesn't have anything really to do with the mask. The masks are there as I guess an added measure to make sure no one is spreading anything. But we're focused primarily on keeping the people 6 feet apart.
And do you have any reservation about being able to do that effectively under these circumstances, Chief Anderson?
We don't. It will be a bit of a challenge, I'm sure, at first, but based on what we've been seeing from some of our videos, I think most people have the understanding of what they should be doing, and it's just going to take us being down there to remind them and let them know.
Thank you, Chief Anderson. Okay,
real
anybody
quick.
else in the council? Yes, Ms. Whitten.
I do have a couple of questions, but Tommy is on the attendees list. If we can pull him into the panelists, that would be great. He's the 555 number. Thank you. Okay, so a couple of questions.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Ms. Whitten? Is that?
Yeah.
I got it. Got it. I'm sorry.
Okay. I do think we have to address some of the situations that have been occurring downtown and with some of our ABC licensed establishments. This talks about walk-up bar service being suspended. Are there any pitfalls in there that we should be considering, like unintended consequences for some establishments that may not also fall under the ability to serve outside under the health stated mandate? That's question number one. And then secondly, could we entertain possibly imposing a drinking, and not a drinking age, sorry, there is one, impose a age of which can be admitted into some of the licensees that exist in some of our areas that are problematic.
Okay. Beth, would you repeat the first question just so I clearly understand it?
Yeah, I just, the walk-up bar service being suspended in the be it further resolved paragraph on page 2. We're allowing outdoor bar service if you comply with state regulations and local regulations, but the indoor walk-up bar service, some establishments, it just may be difficult for them to understand what that actually means. And are there some unintended consequences that we may be imposing on some establishments that weren't really intended to be imposed upon them?
So where we came on that particular one, and I'm sure that this particular resolution, although we tried to minimize unintended consequences, there probably are going to be some. We've tried to account for them on this particular case with the reason why I wanted to see that if you're outside, you could walk up to a bar, is that there are certain businesses that have an outdoor presence, sort of like the brand new putt-putt, it's not called putt-putt golf, but
The country club.
the country club business, the Country Club of Auburn, where their business, they have an outside bar. You basically, get a beer and are playing golf. So we keep the 6 foot distance and abide by all the governor's rules. We didn't want to penalize them by saying you have to shut your business down because we want to eliminate your walk-up bar. Most of the restaurants that have bars have already implemented no walk-up. You have to sit at the bar. There may be some that haven't, but I think the ones that we have contacted COVID procedures because of trying to keep the 6 foot distance from patrons have done that. Megan, did you want to add anything? I know we talked about this a lot, trying to minimize the unintended consequences.
I think the goal is it says when seated, and I think one of the things to be careful about is nothing stops. We have a number of what we call quick serve or fast casual restaurants. Nothing would stop somebody from the intended consequence, and our city attorneys can correct me if I'm wrong, was not to stop anyone from ordering it if they're at a fast casual restaurant or quick serve, but to be served, it's going to have to be delivered to them. They're not going to be able to walk away if it's an indoor only venue. Is that right, Rick?
I believe, Megan, and that's what you had asked us to draft language to address, was to try to prevent the milling around or gathering of people at the bar or at the cash register itself while they're waiting on their beer or standing there consuming it after it's served. I think what you had asked us to do was try to draft language that kept that behavior from occurring and made it easier for Chief Anderson to enforce the 6 foot distance if everybody was at a table or otherwise seated.
Right, so that was not meant to, and would not be interpreted as such that you couldn't order it as long as you're standing 6 feet apart while ordering, but to actually be served, you're gonna have to be seated. Or in the case of the Country Club of Auburn, and it's not picking on them, they may have servers that go outside, and that's fine as well. They're delivering it to people in the outdoors, but if you're indoors, you're gonna need to be seated in order to be served.
Okay, and so piggybacking that comment or those statements, if I am seated at a table, I receive my adult beverage, can I then go stand up and walk around and be standing while consuming my adult beverage?
The language should be, we had considered putting language and it said you had to be seated and consume the beverage. And I believe
in the last of the second, the first, be it further resolved, the language says indoor alcohol consumption in ABC licensed establishments is restricted to customers seated at a table, counter, or bar.
so. The patron would be cited for consuming it if not seated. The bar could be cited for providing it at the bar to someone not seated.
Okay, and then the other thing I was talking about, could we, as a council, change for, give me 1 minute, I'm reading what the regulation is. ABC Rules and Regulations entitled 28 Alcohol Code. I guess the lounge license is allowed to have patrons 19 and up in bars. Could we not change that to be either 21 or 25 and up for only for on-premise lounge class 1 licenses?
My initial thought is that where the state has legislated that, we're preempted from doing it differently, but I would like the chance to research that. I've never been asked that question, Ms. Whitten, and I'd want to give an accurate answer. But I don't believe, I know we can't rewrite that license, the state statute that sets forth those requirements. We would have to, if we could do it, and I don't know that we can, we would have to include it in our own ordinance that just basically said you can't enter at whatever age you had mentioned.
Got you. So we could research that, and if we felt like that was action that was necessary, come back to it if it was available to us.
Yes, ma'am. It would involve some more detailed legal research, but I'm pleased to get on that.
Any other further questions, Beth?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I have a quick question on that. I think that's
Hey, Stephen, hold on just a second. I'll get back to you. Kelly beat in a little bit for you.
Okay,
Okay.
I have a question. And I also
Okay.
have a question I've been trying to get in.
All
Okay,
right, sorry.
All right.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I'm not sure I heard a straight answer on Beth's question. If they're served at the table, can they get up and walk around? Just a yes or a no would be helpful, please.
No,
No. Okay. All right. Yeah, I had some concern about the clarity of the walk-up bar service portion of this as well. So I'm not sure what it's going to take to make it clearer, but I didn't understand the nuance that Rick pointed out, that you can get up and go to the bar and order, and then the delivery has to be to the table. I didn't understand. I didn't get that out of reading the draft resolution. So that could be clearer in my view.
Okay. Mr. Buston, is there something we can do with our language to make that clear, or it's just, have y'all talked about that? Making this more obvious, how the mechanics of it function?
We've tried to capture that and by using two terms. One is served. You have to be served at a seated, you have to be seated to be served, which means if I went to a restaurant that sold beer and the only way I could get it was to go through a line at a restaurant, let's say that does it's not a buffet, but like say Chipotle, for instance, where you go through the line, you order your food and you usually get your beverage, but you pay for your beverage there at the bar, if you will. What we're saying is you can't be served that beer or handed that beer while you're in line. You have to go sit down and then it's brought to you. So you can't consume it standing and you can't be served standing. We can try to come up with additional language, but we thought that was as plain as we could make it.
Okay. Any follow up on that, Kelly?
I don't know.
Okay. We'll come back to you.
Is defined as serving of alcoholic beverages to any person who is not seated. So that implies to me I can walk up and order, I guess. Okay. So the difference is placing your order and then serving is the difference in here. So basically you can place your order, but you can't be served unless you're seated.
That's correct, right?
that's correct. And
Okay.
Kelly, one of the things we struggled with is a restaurant like BurgerFi. You know, that's, if we did the blanket like Tuscaloosa did, that would pretty much put no alcohol sales at BurgerFi at all. What we wanted to do is still maintain the distance, so you could go to BurgerFi, order your burger, order your beverage, but you'd have to go and sit down. Right now, you go to BurgerFi, the very first thing they do if you order a beer is give you the beer, and then you stand there with the beer while you're waiting on your hamburger. That's what we wanted to eliminate, so there are not all these people standing around. And so we wanted them to go and sit down and have their beverage delivered to them when the hamburger.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the intent. That's not, I'm not arguing the intent whatsoever. I'm just not sure that the wording in here is clear enough to folks to understand that you can order, but then you got to be seated at your table and have it delivered to you. If there's a way to clarify that, I think that'd be helpful. But again, I have no issue with the concept and what you're trying to do.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Ms. Connie?
Okay, I want to go way back. When Jim was talking and he said that one of the things that the officer could do was close the bar until the bar comes into compliance. I'm sort of confused on that myself, is because if we're talking about social distancing, then if you close down the bar, how would they come back into compliance? Make me understand that. I mean, how would you say, well, the bar closed, so now they're back in compliance?
So
So
let's
I'm a
say,
little confused.
yeah, so let's say as a hypothetical that you have the bar, our officer goes in and sees that people are not 6 feet apart. It could be because there are 100 people in there, and for them to be 6 feet apart, there should only be 50 people in there. So the officer can say you're closed until you have only 50 people in here. So you got to get rid of 50 people before you can open up again. That would be one scenario.
So you just talking about in compliance with the number of people, not the social gathering.
I'm talking about compliance with 6 foot distancing. That,
Okay. I can see the number of people coming in compliance with, but I don't understand how they can come in compliance if they're closed with social distancing. So if they open back up and they got less than 50 people in there and they're at the distance they're supposed to be in, they're in compliance. Is that what you're saying?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Taylor, I think
Okay,
also
then I have another.
it may help to, what we were trying to address there was if you can't maintain social distance correctly and the officer determines that, you're suspended from any more alcohol sales at that point until it's rectified. So closed is a relative, I guess. Closed doesn't specifically address the way that it could be enforced by suspending the sales of alcohol until somebody came into compliance that night. Doesn't mean they won't get a citation for it that they can come to court for later, but it just means you can't sell any more alcohol while you're not in compliance with the order right then. So it's another tool to immediately address non-compliance of the social distancing.
Okay. So that means that's a right then policy. Okay. Regulation.
Anything else, Connie?
Okay, now one other question I wanted to ask. So how are these regulations going to be monitored? You got enough officers to monitor every bar?
I'll let Cedric, Chief Anderson talk to that, but we have a detail of officers that are patrolling. Chief, you want to address that?
Yes, sir. What we've done, we have dedicated 6 officers each night starting on Wednesday evening, and the detail runs Wednesday through Saturday night. And those officers are tasked with going into the downtown area and just making the circuit throughout the evening while the bars are in operation to ensure that there's adequate social distancing and that the people standing outside are wearing their mask and we're not of the order. So for now, I think we have enough people to cover it. You have to also remember 2 of the bars have shut down starting last night. So we don't have as many in operation in downtown as we did last week.
Connie?
Okay.
You good, Connie? Got any follow up to that?
Oh, I'm good. Okay, I was
Okay.
just, okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, okay. How you?
Mayor Anders, may I add another comment?
Sure.
In trying to help and trying to address what Mr. Griswold pointed out and to clarify and better define that language, I'm having Mr. Stephen Clay edit that right now, and we can try to send to city manager a revised, just that paragraph. So it hopefully makes it more easily understood from an enforcement standpoint and from the patrons and the citizens understanding what's prohibited. So if y'all will take a look at that, I hope that Mr. Griswold, that addresses your concern. If it doesn't, we'll keep working at it.
Rick, do you want to share your screen, Stephen's screen?
I'm not on a.
We're not on a shareable computer right now.
Send it to
Richard,
me and we'll share it.
yeah, just send it to Megan and then she can share it so everyone can see it.
Okay, if you'll just give us a couple of minutes, we'll try to do that.
Okay. While we're doing that, we'll keep going. Stephen, I believe you're next. Stephen Dixon? Okay,
Sorry, I was on mute. I didn't
that's no
realize I was
problem.
on mute.
No problem. We're back to you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
No, I just had a follow-up question with Beth's request at the very end of what she was saying, which was, hang on, I'm trying to.
About age admittance?
Yeah, about ages. Basically, Rick said that he would look into it. If we're not gonna get back together, is it worth the time for our city attorney to do this research? I'm just asking as far as like tax dollars being spent appropriately. Is it worth the time to?
It doesn't cost you anything
research?
for us to do that.
Okay.
It's part of the retainer, so it's a question we'd be pleased to answer.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. So,
Yes,
thank
sir. Uh-huh.
All right. Okay. Anyone else on the council? Has a
Mayor,
question
can
or a
you hear-
thought?
Mayor, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Tommy. Go ahead.
Going back to Councilman Dixon's question earlier about, I was one of the ones that said, I don't mind saying it again. I had questions about whether the council actually had the authority to enact the mask ordinance when we first started discussing this, but that was in reference to, that was before the governor issued the mask ordinance. And the reason I'm able to support this today is because of what the governor has done, and we're basically piggybacking off what the governor has already put in place. That's what makes me think we have the authority to do it now. No, I didn't think we had the authority before the governor issued her order, but now that she has done it, that's through the state health officer, that's why I'm able to have a clear conscience about voting for this today.
Okay. Thank you, Tommy. All right. Anyone else on the council have any additional questions or new questions or anything?
Oh, yeah, I want to ask one more.
Sure.
And I'm at work. So Beth, I actually did not hear your question about the age. Someone came in my office when you were asking a question. What was your question about the age or your statement that you made?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a repeat. We don't have.
Sure. So currently, the lounge class 1 licenses allow you to have 19 and older come into your establishment. And my question was, because we're could be under a state of emergency locally, but we are statewide, could we change the age of admittance to a lounge class 1 license to either 21 and up or 25 and up? And that would curtail some of the activity that's been going on.
And you're suggesting, Ms. Whitten, that could be done under the state of emergency?
Yes, and I've had very in-depth conversations with those who are in the industry, and that's some of the guidance that they said we should look into.
Okay. You got that, Connie?
Thank you, Beth. I got it. I just wanted to, I didn't hear the question. Okay.
No problem. That's what we're here for. Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead, Jay.
I've got a couple.
Sure.
Just for further clarification on indoor and outdoor bars and walk-up service, the way I read it, they have to be seated to receive their drink if they're inside, no matter where they order it. An outdoor bar can be served at the bar. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the way, yes.
So
I want, go ahead.
So if an establishment has a bar approachable from the exterior, serving from the inside, the patron can be served at the outside bar, just because they're outside. I'm just looking for clarification for our, okay.
Right, that was the intent, yeah.
The intent is not for the bar to physically be outside.
Well, I mean, just what you said, if I understood you correctly, if you have a bar that's like the wall between the inside and the outside, and you got an outside part, somebody could walk up to the bar because it's outside and get their drink and walk away, where somebody on the inside could not get their drink and walk away. They have to be seated.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Penalties. We mentioned the establishment being penalized if they serve someone inside while they're standing up. And I want to get this right, but the patron would be penalized if they were milling about with their drink standing up, right? I mean,
Yes, they could be cited. If the officer sees someone standing drinking, they can be cited for that. If an officer sees a bartender hand somebody a beer and then walk away that isn't seated at the bar or seated at a table, then the establishment would be cited. And really, the bartender could too. I mean, if you read the governor's order, it says any individual not complying with these orders. So that authority is already there from the governor. What we're saying is the establishment would be additionally cited under your new resolution.
And I don't need to get into the nuts and bolts of those penalties, but I'm assuming those will be different.
They're all $500 per citation per the governor's order.
Whether I'm the patron or the establishment.
Correct.
Okay. All right, one more, gang, bear with me. The end date on this, we've got it extended through September 13th. I read an interesting article the first of the week in the Plainsman quoting Ron Burgess and Dr. Cam about their expectations for student infection versus hospitalization and needing medical treatment. Good, bad, or ugly, I feel like we're having this conversation today because of attention brought to some of the crowds downtown. Obviously, we received emails and saw the social media posts and photos. We're limiting that ability through September 13th, which is great. How are we going to monitor on the 13th or 14th whether this is working? Because we're not going to be, they're not going to be, in crowds downtown, whether by the establishment's decision to close or our effectiveness with this resolution. How are we going to determine on the 13th if this has been successful? We know that we don't need to extend it, and particularly when we've got the university's medical authority telling us to expect increased cases through mid-October, then tapering off. So what's the end game here? I'm not a fan for overcorrection and kicking the can down the road. We're gonna, if Dr. Cam's speculation, or I shouldn't say speculation, hypothesis is true, then we're gonna see increased number of cases in students escalate through mid-October.
And I think, Jay, that's a good observation. The end date that was picked was basically arbitrary. Tuscaloosa did a 2-week. Basically, it was following that. But your observation is correct. I mean,
Jim,
there's nothing magical about 2 weeks.
Sure. And to extend this, we would have to take what action?
Council would have to come back together and take an action to extend it. Now, we at one point had that the mayor could extend it, and Rick or Stephen, we took that out, and you might want to address why we did that.
What our concern is in our form of government and in the directive given by the governor under the emergency provisions of the state code, it says the body itself, municipal body, and for us, that's the council. So it's just trying to be in compliance with that.
So Mr. Buston, sorry, Rick. So your perspective would be sometime leading up to the 13th. I'm just speculating here, Jay, but sometime leading up to the 13th, you would either make a recommendation to us, or we would have another specially called meeting and have this as our agenda and discuss whether we would like to extend or end. Is that a simple way of saying what the next steps would be as far as considering extension?
Right, but I think going to Councilman Hovey's question, will we know by the 13th?
We won't have any new data on the 13th.
Right. Exactly.
We'll actually see an increase if reports and thoughts from the university's medical expert is true. We'll see an increase. We're pushing them out of the bars and our establishment downtown. I hope we all know and admit they're going to be, they're not going to bed at 9 o'clock because we shut down their ability to congregate downtown. They're going to have house parties and and block parties, and that's just something that we can't do. You can't legislate morality or good decisions. So I'm not sure what we're going to debate on September the 12th or 13th to make a decision. There's no point there, but I'm just saying we're going to be in a corner on the 12th and 13th with no significant information to making, an educated decision on extending this.
Could we not,
Make that date the 16th of September because we have council on the 15th.
Well, we
And then we just have that discussion on the 15th.
right, we could do that, Stephen, or we could, as I think maybe Jay is suggesting, extend the date to October, whatever Dr. Cam has said, October, whatever that date was.
No, I would support that, Stephen. I mean, I think we're already going to be gathered. I'm just pointing out, and sometimes that's not.
Yeah, no, I think that was a good point.
But I'm not suggesting putting this out any further than 2 weeks. I'm just saying, we're going to be handcuffed in 2 weeks with no significant new information.
Mr.
But
Hovey,
we'll be gathered on the 15th, so that's a good compromise.
I'm sorry for interrupting. If you look at the whereas provisions of this resolution, Councilman Hovey, that is your guideline because that's what you're basing this emergency order on or resolution on now. So in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you look back to what you said is the basis for this emergency, and you would touch those areas and see what, if any, information you have that speaks to the basis that you originally wished or chose to enter this resolution as the act of your, the council.
I think whereas we're here today because of some, rightfully so, photos circulating on social media, and we're not going to have those on the 13th. But your point's taken, Greg. You're right.
Okay, so based on what I kind of thought I heard, we would possibly extend this. I mean, the council meeting on the 15th, I'll tell the council it's going to be a pretty robust meeting. It's scheduled to be, things could change, but it could be a pretty, there'd be a lot of volume to our decisions that night. I don't know if we'd want to add a day later and potentially have a standalone meeting with this. But Jim, we would need to make that determination right now if we want to.
Oh, we want to have a date. We have to have a date.
We have to have a date.
So whether it's leave it like it is or put it on the 15th, I think Stephen's recommendation is probably good. Yes, you might have a full meeting, but this would just be one more thing added.
So we would add, based on Councilman Dixon's recommendation and Mr. Hovey's question, we would add 2 days to this and make it on the 15th, September 15th, 2020.
Okay, we will make that change right now. And so when
Does it need to be September 16th?
Yeah, I was going to say the 16th because that's the next day.
It expires at 6 a.m.
So September 16th at 6 a.m., which means we would dispose of the discussion the evening of the 15th. Is that what our interpretation and our intention is, council? Stephen, would you agree with that?
Yes, that's what I.
Okay. All right, so we'll change it from September 13th at 6 a.m. to September 16th at 6 a.m. Okay. All right. Thank y'all for that discussion. All right. Anyone else?
I have one more
Sure.
comment question. It may be a legal one. Could we not, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Could we exclude restaurant licensees as part of this? Just a question.
And I will let Rick, but we have to exclude based on license type. So Rick, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, you would have to have a safety, health, and welfare reason stated to distinguish between the licensees in the same license category, which I would caution you would be difficult to defend if unless you have a real good way to distinguish factually between a category, establishments within a certain license category. I think you're going to be subject to a challenge there because of the why one or the other is more or less cause of the emergency. I would think you would struggle there.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay. All right, we have the.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, Bob, go ahead.
Hey, just for the benefit, I think there's probably a bunch of people whose livelihood is being affected here listening in, and I'm not quite sure how it looks in reality when some enforcement comes into a hypothetical bar, and with the language as it stands now, could you walk me through what it looks like? They come in, they see some type of violation, whether it be social distancing violation or people standing, drinking, and it says the bar will cease serving alcohol until such time as the conditions of the order are met. Does that mean that the enforcement officers stand around and wait, and just the proceedings are held up until such time as they're organized in compliance? And given that, are the owners or the person involved in the infraction cited on the spot and then corrected, and the officers leave and they could return in 30 minutes later and do the exact same thing again? Could you just talk me through that, the actual reality of enforcement of that?
I think pretty much you got it. I'll let Chief Anderson address that. What we are doing right now is pretty much that. If we see the violation, whatever it is, we cite, we walk away, we come back in an hour, they see the violation, another one, or that same violation going on again, we cite again. In this particular case, if it were a closing, I would assume the officer would have to stand there until it was determined whether the bar was just going to close for the night, or whether they were going to close until they could come into compliance and then open back up. But Chief, you want to address that?
Yes, sir. I think the way you just stated it is exactly what we've been doing. We go in and if we have to cite someone, we cite them. We simply make the rounds after that back through the downtown area, and it's a continuous cycle. They return every so often to check to make sure compliance is still being met. With this new resolution we're coming up with, we would intend to do the same thing. If we had to stop operations inside of an establishment until we got X number of people to exit the nightclub, once that was done, then we would leave and allow them to return to normal operations.
Thank you.
You good, Bob?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just have one quick question. I was trying to look through the resolution. I didn't see anything. What's the fine of the citation?
$500.
Okay, and that's for each time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Ron, we had some discussion earlier in the week about, 2 strikes you're out, 3 strikes you're out, or something like that, where they would temporarily lose that license until, for some period of time. Is there anything along those lines that we want to consider?
I'll let Mr. Buston answer that. I think
I'll let Mr. Davidson answer.
Okay, we'll let Mr. Davidson answer that. Go ahead.
Mr. Griswold, would you repeat the question? We were working on language revision.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Glad to. In casual discussions this week, there have been some discussion about, 2 strikes you're out or 3 strikes you're out. At some point, if an establishment is a continual repeater,
yes, sir.
Is there any provision for temporarily removing their liquor license or some other punitive measure if we have someone that simply doesn't come into compliance after repeatedly being cited?
Not in the current resolution you have before you for this reason. What we had been asked to do was draft something that could be put in place immediately to further support our ability to enforce social distancing. What the question you're asking is, if we use a citation for one of these violations or any other code section, if you were overcrowded, for instance, from fire code or anything like that, we currently don't have any language in our business license ordinance that allows us to revoke that business license. So I do think, and it's a good time to have the discussion about amending the business license ordinance to address repeat offenders of whatever the nature of the offense would be it violation of the governor's order, be it violation of our occupancy number that we've given somebody, be it violation of not paying your quarterly taxes and quarterly submissions of. So I do think it's a right time, but let me suggest also, when you cite somebody under those code provisions, and if we cite somebody under this one, every one of these people can come to court and contest that citation. Okay, they have a right under the Constitution to defend a criminal action or a criminal case. If we issue a citation to somebody on the second occasion for overcrowding, we can't take their license at that point until they've been convicted, which means they have a court date in city court and then potentially an appeal to circuit court. Once that second conviction is final, then you could possibly take action if your ordinance is amended to allow you to do that. But that wouldn't get you the immediate relief y'all are looking for right now to address acute situation under an emergency basis. So yes, I recommend considering that. And I do think we've had those discussions and we can prepare language in conjunction with finance department who deals with business licenses most directly to provide you what you're asking for. And I think it's time to do it, but it's not here.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a quick question along those lines as well.
Sure. Hold on just a second, Connie. Bob beat you to the punch. All right, Bob, go ahead.
Does the state board, does the ABC board have that type of power to immediately close a business? In my work, in the fire side of things, if a business is not compliant with fire codes, the state can intervene and immediately shut the business upon their decision. Does the ABC board have an equivalent type of power?
They do, but it's a second violation. I believe the first violation is sort of like the warning. They give you a second violation. They can pull your liquor license. They can't shut you down, but they can pull your liquor license. And if all you do is sell liquor, then basically you're shut down. Now, again, I'll let the city attorney address that.
Jim, your understanding is more deeper than mine on that particular issue. It is a separate license administered separately and enforced by their agents through either district or circuit court, I suppose. But I can't speak to what automatic shutdown provisions they have. I don't know the answer, but I'll look at that while we're looking at the age question, because that gets back to the same set of regulations.
Hey, Rick.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was told that under Title 41 Administrators Code of Alabama State Code, that under the emergency orders, that the administrator has the right given to him in Title 28 to immediately suspend a license with proper evidence, and that they could grant that suspension and then reinstate it at the city's request. So if you could look at that.
Okay, I'll be glad to look at that.
Mr. Buston, related to what Mr. Parsons just asked, could you, and maybe this would be directed towards Chief Anderson, could you kind of talk about the role that ABC has in observing and governing these establishments?
I'll let Chief Anderson, since we work very closely with ABC and they have been working with us in the last couple of weeks, I'll let Chief Anderson answer that.
Yes, sir. Basically what they've been doing is they have paired with our teams that have been walking and working the downtown area, checking the nightclubs. They're looking for violations, in particular liquor sales that are taking place after at night, and also any consumption that goes on after 11:30. They did warn one of the bars downtown, which was their first warning. They have to, according to what the agents were telling us, they have to have a second violation before they can take any type of administrative action towards pulling a license. So they're going to come back tonight and tomorrow night, and again partner with our officers and check the local establishments. And if they have occasion to cite a nightclub a second time, then that process will begin.
And a lot of times if they come, Chief Anderson, is it unannounced or does everybody always know when they're in town?
No, sir. There have been occasions where they've shown up and we didn't know they were down there. But typically they do show us that courtesy and let us know when they're going to be doing something in for assistance. So tonight is one of those nights. They know that we're doing a detail downtown, and they've stated that they would like to participate, and so they want to keep an eye on compliance down there as well.
Thank you, Chief.
So I have a question
Sure.
picking up on that.
Yep.
In the event that the ABC enforcement is present tonight and they are going to, they come upon a situation where it is a second citation, then their rule overrules the local rule, right? They could determine that they could pull the license or some such, correct?
That would be my understanding, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. I don't see any further questions right now, and I know we've got this updated language that has been sent. Ms. Crouch, are we in a position to put that on the screen for everyone? Okay. Mr. Buston, maybe Mr. Davidson should walk us through this. How would you like to do that?
Rick, do you want to go ahead and do that?
Actually, we could do it, yes. What you have before you is nothing has changed except in the one be it further resolved paragraph where we reclarified the language to make it more clear. So if we want to address that first, where Stephen has just highlighted, this would be effective, I believe tomorrow at 5, where you cannot engage in walk-up bar services at indoor bars. You can only serve them to seated customers, alcoholic beverages. And if you consume and you're not seated, that's a violation by the patron. And then the last sentence is, of course, any alcohol establishment with an outdoor bar, that would be an exception to these two provisions. That is the clarification we just added. And then in the next 2 paragraphs down, we just made it clear because we saw the questions about the fine. We just added that provision in there so that anybody who violates this resolution, which has provisions that are different than the governor's order, then those people could be fined up to $500.
All right.
We also changed the date to September 16th.
Sure.
For your discussion.
Okay.
And this is Kelly. I'm sorry, I'm still having difficulty. The last sentence, walk up bar service. Does that mean you walk up to the bar, order your drink, get your drink, and then walk around with it and we'll go back? Or is walk up bar, you can order at the bar, but still only be served at the table?
The intent is for that to govern an outdoor bar situation. Am I correct on that? Mm-hmm. So the intent, Kelly, would be for this to be an outdoor bar where you are physically outside, you buy or receive a drink from a bar that serves the outside customer. All right.
And then you can walk around with that.
You can walk.
Okay. Is that what we wanted him to be able to do? Is to walk around with it or not? So you walk up to the bar, order the beer, the guy hands you a beer and you turn around and you walk around with it. And if that's what we want to do, then this is clear. Yeah. If we want them to be seated when they receive the drink, then it's something different.
Not outside. I don't believe we're asking for seated outside. Correct, Mr. Buston, Mr. Davidson? That's not our intent here.
And again, We didn't want to penalize those businesses that have an outdoor, like the golf course or the golf business that just opened. Because that's one of their draws, is that you get a beer and you play golf. You can't be seated playing golf, you're outside. So we tried to account for that, and that's how we tried to do that.
Okay, that's fine. I understand now. Thank you.
Yep. Good question. Anybody else from the council? I know this has just come before you, so anybody have an initial question, thought? Is this, Mr. Buston, for us to move forward? How would we do that as far as, that's not what we've received, but that's what we're looking at.
That's what you would, if you did a motion to pass this resolution, this is what you would be passing.
Okay.
What is there on the screen?
What is on the screen?
With all the changes.
All right. Okay. Is everybody clear on that? All righty. Okay. Everybody good? If we, how should we move forward? Should we leave it up there, or do we need to go back to the screen with everybody on? Mr. Buston, how should we move forward here?
Let's go ahead and go back.
Okay.
Megan, you can unshare your screen.
All right. Okay.
I have one question that just kind of came to me. I'm sorry. There are some bars that have outdoor bars as well. They have bars inside and outside. So how is that addressed?
I think it's the same way, Stephen, as if it's the outside bar, and it's outside, and then so if you can walk up that outside bar, and as long as you stay outside in their outside area.
Okay.
Inside, you have to be seated at a table.
Okay.
But we expect the business to serve the guest outside. Is that correct?
Well, and as I said, there are some, and I don't know, Stephen, maybe this is what you're thinking of. If the bar is actually the wall between the outside and the inside, which some places have that, where the same bartender will serve the person inside as outside. So the difference being inside that, if inside you can't get your beer at the bar or your drink at the bar. If you're outside and you're staying outside, you can. It's basically, again, trying to conform with the governor's orders, but also trying not to penalize those businesses that do have an outside area that's basically their business.
So we're good with rooftop bars because there's a couple of them in our community.
Yes, and those would be considered outside.
Outside service and outside guests to be socially distanced.
They have to be, yes.
Okay. So just because you're outside doesn't mean you can, come together with people from different households. You're supposed to stay socially distanced.
And let me, all this confusion, I guess we knew was coming, and our legal counsel brought that up, that trying to differentiate between the inside and the outside was problematic. And I understood that. Again, I'm just trying to not be the broad, it's not easy. Forget about it, as they did in Tuscaloosa. I don't feel that that's fair to those businesses who have really put a lot of effort and expense into complying with the governor's orders. But I want to let you know that our legal counsel did say that this would be a confusing issue, and I want to give them credit for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask another, because I think this is important that we all get right. Could we not strike the first, be it further resolved paragraph, and simply state that anyone who's cited for a violation of any applicable state health order fall under the suspension of alcohol sales until they remedy that violation. I mean, I know that's the law as it currently stands, and the fact that we have to create a law to support the law is somewhat ridiculous, but it's where we are. And, you know, if we could just have residents, those who are part of our community, do what they're supposed to do, we wouldn't be in this situation, but we are. So to remove confusion, could we not just strike that whole paragraph and just go with just reinforce the state health order? Or do we need to have something with a little more teeth to make it more enforceable?
Which paragraph again, Beth, were you referring to?
You're just talking on page 2 where it says, be it further resolved, that entire paragraph?
Yeah, that entire paragraph that we've been discussing for the last hour.
Okay, and I guess if we did that, then basically we're not doing anything.
Yeah, we are. We are saying that if you are cited, because right now, the only recourse we have is providing a citation of $500 per incident. We aren't allowed to suspend anything or close anything. But if we pass this resolution by stating that if you're cited for violating any applicable state health order, then we have teeth to say you can't serve alcohol until you've remedied this situation. And that would apply to everyone still.
Okay. I'll let legal counsel answer that.
Yes, you could take out all of that provision and just only tell the enforcement officers and our police officers who are there that should you see a violation of the governor's order, you are to suspend alcohol sales until they come into compliance. And basically you're saying if you catch anybody closer than 6 feet together and you're a licensed establishment selling alcohol or whatever business you're in, we could suspend sales until you're in compliance.
Which is the law currently.
But is that putting too much responsibility on the officer or too much subject?
That's a question for the chief and the director of public safety.
I know they do that every day, but.
Chief, if you want to weigh in.
Yes, sir. I'm just listening to it and trying to work my way through it. Typically, what I like to do is stay in my lane as far as, and maybe it's the language that's being used about suspending a license. To me, it's kind of difficult for us to suspend a license that we didn't issue. So I like the part if we're gonna cite them to stop operations inside the establishment until they come into compliance. I think that is something that's definitely doable. But for us to say your license is suspended when we didn't issue the license, ABC boards issued the license, I think we would have to kind of defer to them on that.
And I'm sorry, Chief Anderson, if I said it that way. I meant just how the paragraph reads, second to last paragraph, what you just stated, that you would have the ability to suspend alcohol sales.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I said license, suspend alcohol sales.
Okay.
As it reads currently in this resolution. My concern about the walk-up bar service is that if I am a patron and I am served and receive my beer or my beverage at my table or at the bar, but I see someone that is a family member coming to meet me or someone within my household and I get up and walk to greet them, then I'm in violation. And that is such a natural thing that someone is accustomed to doing that I think they would inadvertently break the rules without knowing that they're breaking the rules. And I'm just not a fan of creating rules that are have really unintended consequences. Now, I support what we're doing because I do think there has to be something put into motion that gives our law enforcement further teeth to enforce what the governor's orders are. And like Chief Dawson said earlier, if the governor's orders weren't in place, I don't know that we'd be having this conversation. So that's just my 2 cents on that matter. If the council's not in agreement with doing that, then I'm fine. I just think we have to be very clear with our ABC license holders, specifically, in my opinion, the restaurants, of how they need to educate their consumers and their patrons.
I think if I could add something to maybe talk about that, with any enforcement that's done, the officers or staff have the ability or discretion to be reasonable with it. I think what we're all talking about is these gross situations where we're seeing these mass crowds being somewhere, and you're sitting watching every movement and seeing somebody step out for just a second and step back. I don't think that's what the intention of any action would be. It's to a vehicle to lessen the numbers of people that are dense in these places, I think, is the scope of it. And I don't think you would see unreasonable actions going on by staff.
Thank you. That's great to know. And I know that about our public safety. It's glad to have that verbalized so that those who are listening understand that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Beth, I do think if legal counsel feels it's appropriate, we could, if city council wants to modify that to just do what you said, that would be fine. I think if they're in agreement.
Yes, I think if you deleted the main body of the resolve, the first be it resolved paragraph, and just limited it to how Ms. Whitten had described, you're fine with that, and the Chief Anderson says he can enforce that, which is, it's it's no different than if we came in and caught somebody having occupancy over the number in a fire code situation. We do have the authority to cease the operation so they come to compliance. So that is very consistent with what we've enforced for a different violation, and that makes it very straightforward, and we can do it legally.
So,
Mr. Davidson, do you believe that this allows us to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish and provide some structure around what's going on to prevent the gross number of gatherings that we witnessed and saw from last weekend?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure how to answer that.
Give it a shot. We've known each other a long time.
You probably don't want me to do that, but I will say that what you have fashioned does address it, and it confirms what our law enforcement officers are already doing in response to what they saw without you having to act as a council. So I think they would completely and totally support this action to bolster and to endorse their efforts to enforce what's in place with the governor's order already. And I think the idea that it can be a violation not only by a business, but by the person committing the violation itself really gives people a chance to change their behavior. And I think that's all we're all seeking, I guess, as a council, and what we're trying to draft in the way of language is to get the behavior to change.
And for that reason, I would say leave it as it's presented or amended, because it does provide a vehicle for personal accountability to the individual, not just the business owner. Because I think this state mandate does put a lot of pressure on the business owner as well.
Okay, so Ms. Whitten, what you're suggesting then and offering is that we stay right where we are with the amended order that we've seen on our screen here this afternoon, not the one that we received in the email before the meeting, but the amended order that Mr. Davidson and Mr. Clay worked on and we looked at a little while ago. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This order is what you're referring to, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Crouch. Okay,
Okay, just want to be sure, and I'll stop screen sharing again.
no, we're good. Ms. Taylor, I thought you were starting to ask a question just a second ago. Do I remember that correctly?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am. Were you about to
Okay,
ask a question just a little bit ago?
I wasn't gonna ask a question. I was just gonna make a comment, and it was what Kelly had asked, and the attorney made. He clarified. It was a question I was gonna ask, so the clarification, and I was just gonna thank him for clarifying that, because I wanted to know personally with these citations, how's that working out, and I know they said that they're giving this, they passing out citations. So are the people paying the citations, or so I was just curious to know how that was working out, but I see it has to go through a process. So.
Mr. Buston, could you explain what happens when somebody's issued a citation?
Well, the first thing on the citation, there is a court date. And so then they have the option to come to court. They can pay the citation right off, or they can come to court and contest the citation. The municipal court will make a decision. They then have the opportunity to appeal that decision to the district court. Am I correct, Mr. Davison?
The appeal would be to the circuit court for jury.
Circuit court. I'm sorry, circuit court.
That's correct.
All right. Any further comments or
so I guess
questions?
I
Go ahead.
guess my question was, is that working? Are they appealing them, or they go ahead and pay the citation and just do the same thing over again? So I was just wondering how was that working out?
I don't think they have, from the very first citations that we've written, they have come to court yet. So I don't know. I mean, several of the places got multiple citations.
But this was last week, Mr. Buston.
It was just last week. So I don't think we've had time for them to go through the court so we could see how it came out.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution as amended.
Okay.
Second.
Have a second?
I have one. Hold on one second.
Go ahead. We've got motion second. Now we can have some comments. Go ahead, Tommy.
I'm unable to see what y'all are seeing and what changes. Would it be too much trouble for somebody just to quickly read that for me where I can hear?
Sure.
Megan, would you mind doing that for us, please?
Sorry about that. Chief Dawson, the first be it further resolved will now read, be it further resolved that effective August 28th, 2020, beginning at 5 p.m., all ABC licensed alcohol establishments in the city of Auburn shall suspend walk-up bar services at indoor bars and only allow alcoholic beverages to be served to seated customers. Further, the serving of alcoholic beverages to any person who is not seated bar is here.
Megan, you broke up. Start with the further again.
Further, the serving of alcoholic beverages to any person who is not seated at a table/counter/bar is hereby prohibited. Indoor alcohol consumption in such establishments is restricted to customers seated at a table/counter/bar. Any ABC licensed alcohol establishment with an outdoor bar complying with all applicable local and state regulations may allow walk-up bar service at the outdoor bar. We also added a be it further resolved that any person or business violating any provision of this resolution shall, upon conviction, be punished by a fine of not more than $500. And we also amended the date to say the state of local emergency shall extend to September 16th, 2020 at 6 a.m.
Got it,
Thank
Tommy?
you.
I know that's a lot to consume. You okay?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I would offer to the council that maybe we think about putting this on our committee of the whole for September 15th and discussing it then. We can discuss that later. All right, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Jay, you were
Motion-
mute.
Excuse me?
Jay was muted during that.
Thanks, Stephen. Aye.
Okay. All right. Any opposed? Motion carries. I want to thank all of you for working diligently on this. Thank you to Jim and your staff. This has come together very rapidly. This is a very difficult issue. I'm proud of the investment of each one of our council members and our staff to find a pathway for us to take. This is a very difficult decision for us to make. It's difficult for me personally to think about and done what we've asked them to do the entire time. I believe the council's approach is the right one, but I want to remind our community that we need your cooperation and we need you to follow these rules. We need all of you to do that. And if not, the council can always come back together and amend this order. So please, now, as we move forward, we look forward for everybody to continue their life, but you've got to follow the rules that have been established through the governor and through this resolution today. Personal responsibility is paramount. All of us need to make sure that we're looking out for our neighbor and that we're doing the right kind of things that are not going to endanger those that live near us or that we're going to come across. So enjoy Auburn, enjoy fall semester, but please be mindful of your conduct and your actions as we move forward. Thank you to all of you. Is there a move to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned.